Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Last time we left off with the novel amphibious truck, talking about the ducks, which is a little useful aquatic truck, which I thought was pretty neat. We're now on to Generals at Work in the Sicilian Campaign, July 1943. Leaders of the armies. Studying a map of Sicily at the Royal Palace in Palermo, are left to right, Major General Geoffrey Keyes, so right here, General Sir Bernard L. Montgomery, there's Montgomery, and then Lieutenant General George S. Patton, right there. Oh, I should say George S. Patton, Jr., because that's technically what he is. Commander of the American 7th Army, General Patton later made an excellent record for himself in the Sicilian campaign. This was marred to some extent by an unfortunate incident, the news of which was not released by the Army until months later. During an inspection of one of the field hospitals near the front line, General Patton struck an invalid soldier who was obviously suffering from combat hysteria, otherwise known as PTSD to us nowadays, but, you know, they called it a lot of different things. Way back, they used to call it shell shock, things like that, but combat hysteria, obviously, what they called it right here. The general later made a profuse public apology, and the affair was attributed to the tension of battle. After Sicily, General Patton was relieved of command of the 7th Army to assume a high post in London. Basically, they're getting rid of him. They're pushing him away because he was too much of a headache for him. They didn't want to have to deal with that again, so they pushed him somewhere where he couldn't be an issue. Or so they thought. British wounded evacuate from Sicily, July 1943. First Sicily wounded await embarkation. Stretcher cases wounded at Syracuse waiting in landing craft to go aboard a hospital ship. On the first day of the invasion, the hospital ship Telumba was sunk by the enemy, although the vessel was fully lighted in accordance with the Geneva Convention. Yeah, so a lot of times they just broke the Geneva Convention. Either enemy. It happened. Sometimes, most of the time, the Allies would not do it, as far as we know, but it did happen with both sides. Sometimes it was an accident, other times it wasn't, and you can never really tell if it was an accident or not. It's not like your enemy is going to say, "Hey, that was an accident," but they're not going to say that. But yeah, sadly, a lot of these quite a few of these hospital ships got struck, which. Just unfortunate. These poor men, wounded, just trying to get home, dying, but just awful. Americans and British make progress in Sicily, July 1943. 8th Army's thrust for Catania. Within 5 days of the initial landing, remarkable progress was achieved by the Allied forces. The U.S. 7th Army, under General Patton, which had encountered strong enemy opposition, not only held firmly to the bridgeheads at Licata and Gela, but even enlarged them. New Allied landings were made near Catania, which was the goal of the British 8th Army under General Montgomery. Canadian units of his command joined up with the Americans at Ragusa, 20 miles inland, and Allied cruisers and monitors bombarded Augusta and entered the port on July 13th. A party from HMS Exmoor hoisted the white ensign over the town. On July 15th, the British advanced to Brucoli, less than 20 miles from Catania. 4 Italian generals were killed in action, and another surrendered with all of his staff. 7 airfields were securely in Allied possession, and prisoners taken in Sicily totaled 12,000. One of the airfields, Ponte Olivo, was taken by a fierce bayonet attack. German attempts to bring reinforcements into the struggle were frustrated by heavy air attacks upon vital links of communication. Turin being heavily bombed by Lancasters, which flew across France and returned by the Atlantic. This was the third big successive campaign for the British 8th, the other two being Libya and Tunisia. My bad. Pictures show, top left, right here, troops of the 78th Division mopping up in a captured town. You can see them going door to door, just checking for any troops, making sure there's no enemy still around that could be hiding and then later attack them. In the center, right here, enemy gun captured at Syracuse in firing order. And you can see it's in perfect firing order, meant to fire out probably at water or maybe at the beaches to stop any landings. But, yeah. Right, Canadian miners at work. Yeah, you can see they're trying to mine up what appears to be rubble, potentially. I can't quite tell. It's not super clear. But yeah, they're mining up some of the land there. The bottom left, British infantry rounding up snipers near Augusta. You can see their crouched down positions, trying to hide behind the wall. Luckily, this wall's decently tall, so they don't have to crouch too bad. But yeah, trying to get into any enemy sniper position and remove that sniper from the engagement. And then the right, civilians giving a welcome to British troops at Pacino. Yeah, they were probably just happy to be no longer occupied by the Germans. Like I said in the previous video, this is a little bit of Italian troops here. There's like 100,000 from what they said, and around 400,000 Germans. So a lot of these people were probably just happy to not have the Germans there anymore. The campaign in Sicily. And here we see a huge map, thankfully. The Allied attack on Sicily began with massed airborne and naval landings in the southeast corner of the island on July 10th, and virtually ended with the fall of Messina on August 17th. The island was finally occupied after only 6 weeks of hard fighting by U.S., British, and Canadian troops. They were delayed in their progress by the rugged and mountainous territory, by the difficulties of maintaining supply and communication, and, not least, by the determined resistance of the German divisions, especially in in the plain of Catania. That was a little confusing. After the initial landings in the extreme south, the Allies soon gained their primary objective, including many good airfields and the great port of Syracuse. Actually, the enemy was taken completely by surprise, for, having expected the main Allied landings from the direction of Bizerti and other northwest African ports, they concentrated their main defenses in the northwest corner of Sicily. What the Allies did, however, was to land a large part of their forces from Malta, where, on account of the shorter sea crossing, the landings could be made under the cover of massed fighter aircraft. After the main bridgeheads had been established along a coastline of roughly 100 miles, the Allies fanned out as they proceeded to advance rapidly inland. The Americans drove westward along the coast, capturing Agrigento and advancing to Palermo, the occupation of which cut off thousands of Italian troops in the northwest corner. The Canadians captured Ragusa, then fought their way through to the center of the island to take the important key towns of Aina and Leforte. Meanwhile, the Eighth Army advanced from Syracuse and Augusta towards the Catania Plain. It was here that the Germans made their greatest stand. The Eighth Army's breakthrough towards Randazzo and Messina was thus delayed until U.S. and Canadian troops were able to sweep down from the north coast and smash the Germans' rear. So yeah, the British, here we go, we can see, from Malta, obviously, like they said, they were all expecting up here, which, I don't know. I mean, if you're really thinking about this, why would the enemy put all their stuff, or put a lot of defensive here? It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Because, like, if the Allies have Malta, that would make the most sense. Jump off from Valletta and go into Sicily. But maybe the enemies got some wrong data or something, or weren't thinking straight. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Also, just as an aside, this is how big Sicily is if you are looking at the United Kingdom. So this is about how big Sicily is. So it's not huge, but it is a decent bit of land. It really makes you realize how big the British Isles are, too. Or the main Isle of Britannia. But, yeah. So you can see right here is where part of the Allies landed. And here's Syracuse. They obviously take Syracuse. 8th Army goes up here to Syracuse, takes Syracuse and Augusta, and then gets stopped at around Catania, right here. Well, while they're doing that, the Canadians go, like they said, they go northwards into more of like the center, and they take a lot of that. And the Americans, who they get sent on basically like a side mission, and they really weren't expected to be able to take this. A lot of people in the British and other places thought that the Americans were just going to be bogged down because of how we performed in Africa. But General Patton wanted to prove that the Americans could stand with the big boys. And so what happens is he pushes all the way and basically kicks the enemy all the way around the island and then gets all the way here. And Montgomery is still stuck in Catania. And obviously the Canadians pushed up through here too. But the rapid speed of the American advance caught everyone by surprise, including the enemy. And part of it is because of General Patton. And he was trying to prove that, hey, look, the Americans can stand with the big boys. We can do this. We're not as bad as you think we are. And it actually gained a lot of respect. Actually, there's a little, not an anecdote, but an aside, once again. Montgomery and Patton kind of had like a love-hate relationship, sort of. So they were like rivals, Later in life, I believe Montgomery said, like, he really respected Patton, which makes sense. But with that, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Tell me what I can improve on. I really want to make these videos better for you guys. And as always, subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thank you.